Sunshine is absolutely one of my favourite films ever made. Just so you can gauge where this sits with me, let me list some of my other favourites which have similar themes or aspects. The Departed, Uncut Gems, The Revenant, End of Evangelion. I know that one seems a bit weird, but if you've seen both, you'd get it. And Good Time. I could list more, but I don't really want to bloat this video. The point I'm trying to illustrate is that this film is, in my opinion, on par with all of those films, and there's at least one thing better than each of them. This is a film about the hubris of humanity. It's not a very original sci-fi premise to start off with. A group of the world's top scientists and astronauts in respective fields have to fly a 16-month mission to the sun, to drop a bomb in it because the sun is dying and this is the only hope. But it's the execution of all of these things, as well as the phenomenal writing and direction, that makes this film such a masterpiece. The ship that we follow, the Icarus II, is the second attempt, the final attempt. Once this film starts going, it does not slow down, it only ramps up. It's horribly dark in a way few movies are, and as soon as the first mistake in the film happens, everything is pretty much set in stone on the fates of everyone in this ship, and it is crushing to watch. There are a lot of pieces of media out there where everyone dies, and in all of those pieces there's a moment where you realise it. Sometimes for different people that moment is different. Halo Reach, for example, is one of those stories, and people have said different things. One friend I used to know said it was this shot, the walk back alone after George's death. A lot of people say it was Cats. One person I talked to were holding out hope all the way until Carter's death. But in this film, it's immediate. The first set piece of the film sets in stone that everyone is going to die. It's an inevitability. Unlike other films where the emotional response of the audience comes from losing that hope around the third act when the action starts and you see people dying, here you spend the majority of the film watching a crew that already knows it's the end, and that makes it all the more crushing. The first example of this one's constantly ramping pacing is where it's established in the first scene with the full crew that in a few hours communication with Earth will be impossible, so say your goodbyes now.
The solar wind reading is much higher than we'd anticipated at this distance.
For the moment, we can still send package messages back. High-frequency bursts will rise above the interference and the moon stations will be able to pick them up. But it's possible that within 24 hours, we won't be able to communicate at all.
Possible.
Probable.
Kappa, who I might add is played brilliantly by Cillian Murphy, takes too long, so Mace can't send his own message back. They fight, a soon-to-be running theme with the two, and instead of slowing down after this, a few scenes later, just after a small bit of foreshadowing of multiple things and some establishment that I'll get into it a bit, the mistake that causes the disaster of this film to come into effect is made. The mistake that will get every person in this room and on this ship killed is made. 20 minutes and 47 seconds into the film. The Icarus II consists of 8 crew members. Those crew members are Canada, the captain of the ship. His screen time is limited as the first to die around the 40-minute mark, but he's understudied the crew and ultimately on board with Searle, the ship's counselor. He's the one who makes the fatal mistake I'll analyse in a bit. Searle has also been investigating the effects of looking into the sun. He describes it as a kind of opposite sensory deprivation tank.
The point about darkness is you float in it. You and the darkness are distinct from each other because darkness is an absence of something. It's a vacuum. The total light envelops you. It becomes you. It's very strange. I know. I recommend it.
What's strange, Sherlock, is that you're the psych officer on this ship, and I'm clearly a lot saner than you are.
Although Searle's curiosity with the sun ultimately seems like more of an obsession, as he spends most of his free time staring into it. Mace is the ship's engineer, played amazingly by Chris Evans, who you will recognise as Captain America, and if you ever doubt his range, look here. He kills being an asshole, but one that's still right. Mace is fully willing to kill everyone on the ship, including himself if it would mean succeeding in this mission. He never spells out his philosophy for us, but many other members do it for him. Mace puts the mission above all else. At the 40-minute mark, he makes a decision to flood in a now on-fire greenhouse with some of their limited oxygen to burn the fire out, but this will seal their fate completely, and they won't have enough oxygen to get back home. All because this choice of him practically killing everyone on the ship was a guarantee of the fire not spreading to other systems, because he refuses to roll the dice unless it's in the most dire of circumstances. And he is right for the whole film. Mace will die being right. Every single call he makes in this film might be a difficult one, but ultimately if he had made it, things would have played out completely differently, and every single danger we've seen him experience in the film would have been avoided. Every single one, if only everyone had listened to Mace. Kappa is the ship's physicist. He designed the bomb the crew is going to use to keep the sun going. He understands the odds best and is ultimately the one who makes the call that going with 2 bombs is better than 1. Corazon, and I'm sorry I'm mispronouncing that, the movie does not say her name very much. She's played brilliantly by Michelle Yeoh. She's the ship's botanist, managing the plants and oxygen on board, although her purpose quickly becomes managing what little oxygen they have left after a whole farm lights ablaze. Harvey is the communications officer and the member of the crew who gets the least amount of focus in the film. He's abrasive and clashes with Mace at select points. Trey, while being played by Benedict Wong, who I love, also isn't given a great deal to work with. His screen time is mostly dedicated to wordless acting that he does brilliantly before his suicide just before the 3rd act. And finally, there's Cassie, the ship's pilot and most emotional member of the crew, who helps to nail home just how fucked up this whole situation is getting. After the cast is introduced, we get our first fight between Kappa and Mace, and a quick apology between the two before they move on. This scene really nails home the stakes at play here. Kappa and Mace don't have time to beat each other's necks, they have more important jobs that need to get done, and it's just a really nice touch. This conflict doesn't need to be partially resolved here, it could go on in much more heated fashion till the end of the movie, but it doesn't. They cut it here because that's what these people would do in this situation. They'd evaluate the situation and do what was right. If you couldn't already tell, it's very quickly becoming apparent if you're watching the film just how much it's doing and how much it does well. To go on a short cinematography tangent, the film is shot perfectly for what it's trying to do. The vast majority of shots inside the Icarus II are close, not claustrophobically so, but most of the time while people are in the same room, the cinematography makes it obvious that there are. Long shots are rarely used, and if they are, it's to highlight the isolation of a character on their own. However, whenever we focus on the sun or get any shots outside the ship, the film feels shy to use close-ups aside from in spacesuit helmets. Every shot feels far away. The observation deck on the Icarus II is a great example. When we watch the group see Mercury pass by, everyone stops and appreciates its beauty, and you do too with them. Aside from the cinematography, the film establishes key things like the mainframe and the coolant perfectly. This is all it needs to do because it isn't a crucial detail but one the audience should still know of, even if it's subconsciously. And the film is filled with moments like these, it's brilliant. The crew is all constantly at mild passive odds of each other. It makes sense given they're all masters in their fields, but those fields can butt heads, especially when you take the characters' personal ideologies into account. Mace cares only about the mission and never agrees with Cassie, who cares so much about the people. Although they all understand the stakes and all understand the sacrifices they might have to make. Anyway, let's finally talk about the scene I've been alluding to this whole time. The brief that gets every man and woman on the ship killed. It started because of a distress signal sent from the previously thought destroyed Icarus I. It established how the crew might have survived.
You're saying they're still alive?
We don't know.
But they could be. Their oxygen is self-replenishing, water is recycled, and they have all the solar power that they need.
What about food? There's no way their supplies could have lasted 7 years.
That depends. They have stock to cover 8 people for 3 years.
That's a 4-year shortfall. That's a hell of a diet.
We don't know what happened to Icarus I. There might have been an accident or something else. There might not have been 8 people to feed.
And how possible it might be for them to get to the Icarus I.
If I had to make a guess right now, I'd say we could adjust our trajectory. We could fly straight to them.
And then they debate appropriately.
But we're not going to do that. Just to make it absolutely clear, there's no way we're going to do that. We have a payload to deliver to the heart of our nearest star. We're delivering that payload because that star is dying, and if it dies, we die. Is anyone here seriously considering otherwise?
May I put a counter-argument,
No!
Captain? It would, of course, be absurd to alter our trajectory to assist the crew of the Icarus I. Their lives are entirely expendable when seen in the context of our mission, as are our own lives.
Exactly.
However, there is something on board the Icarus I that may be worth the detour. As you pointed out, Mace, we have a payload to deliver. A payload, singular. Now, everything about the delivery and effectiveness of that payload is entirely theoretical. Simply put, we don't know if it's going to work. But what we do know is this. If we had 2 bombs, we'd have 2 chances.
You're assuming we'd be able to pilot Icarus I.
Which is assuming that whatever stopped them completing the mission wasn't a fault or damage to the spacecraft.
It's a lot of assumptions.
It is. It's a risk assessment. The question is, does the risk of a detour outweigh the benefits of an extra payload?
And this is where the mistake happens. Mace asks to bring it to a vote, and Sol comes up with this.
We'll have a vote.
No, we won't. We're not a democracy. We're gonna make the most informed decision available to us.
Made by you by any chance?
Made by the person best qualified to understand the complexities of payload delivery. Our physicist.
Kappa eventually goes on to make the call that two cheddars are better than one because he views it from the perspective of a physicist, his perspective, his biased perspective. It doesn't take into account what if whatever went wrong with the Icarus 1 is possible on Icarus 2, what if someone on the Icarus 1 isn't too friendly, what if the whole ship is fucked. Kappa only sees the statistical possibility that two chances are better than one, and because the choice rests on him, that's what happens, and that's why they all die. Just a few scenes later, Trey, while running the hundreds of calculations needed to change the Icarus 2's trajectory slightly to get to the Icarus 1, he forgets to account for the shield protecting him from the sun by 1.1 degrees. And such a small amount of a very human error causes Cadda's death while he's trying to make repairs, and another human mistake from Cassie where she wants to make sure Cadda and Kappa are safe when they go to the surface, just to give them some more shade, ultimately causes the greenhouse to light on fire. Paired with Mace's decision to vent the oxygen to get rid of the fire as soon as possible, that just seals the crew's fate further. I'd just like to again highlight the mastery of the filmmaking on display here. This set piece establishes how all of the key players of the crew act in crisis, but even does the same for the smaller, seemingly less important members, because the film wants to create the effect of the audience not being able to tell who's going to die next. Canada, in a moment of bravery, decides to face the sun knowing he's doomed. Searle on the comms asks obsessively for Canada to tell him what he sees, while Kappa in the other suit on the comms begs Searle to tell Canada to run, but Kappa's drowned out by this film's phenomenal score. And afterwards you're left to wallow in that depressive state of everyone knowing that they're going to die because of two human mistakes caused by a decision made from a biased perspective, because everyone's perspective on this ship is biased, all perspectives are. But you want to keep watching. It's set in stone before the hour mark that everyone you see in this movie is going to die, but just like the crew, you almost forget that fact because you have to move on from it, because they have to. They have a mission to finish. There's this conversation about it between Cassie and Kappa, where Kappa is focusing on his science as distraction, Cassie uses him as her distraction. It's a phenomenal scene that establishes the way this film is going to end, with Kappa and Cassie at the end trying to arm the bomb. When the crew finally make it to the Icarus 1, it's abandoned. Mace quickly realizes it's sabotage, but unfortunately just too late, as the airlock is blown and sacrifices have to start being made left and right. Searle stays behind to let the rest of the crew out, but because there's only one spacesuit, Mace and Harvey have to wrap themselves in Mylar to hope that that can save them from the cold vacuum of space. Harvey doesn't make it and Mace's hand is injured. After failing to obtain any oxygen from the Icarus 1, the decision is made that Trey has to die next or the rest of the crew won't make it to even drop off the bomb. But Trey already knew that, he's already killed himself. Kappa and Mace fight again, this time feeling even more pointless than before, Mace blaming all of these deaths on Kappa, and he's kind of right. But the crew has to move on regardless, doing the last things they need to do before they're going to die. A fifth person is revealed to be on board. Someone from the Icarus 1 survived, and they're on board to let the sun go out. They don't want the crew to succeed. He injures Kappa, kills Corazon, and tries to fry the systems of the ship, which Mace will die fixing. He tries to fix the ship's AI as well to help, but his legs get stuck. He freezes to death in the coolant, begging Kappa to finish it.
Oh, God. Do it, Kappa! Do it.
And Kappa does. He puts on a spacesuit and walks all the way to the bomb before launching himself out of the ship to grab onto it. He goes inside to find Cassie, who helps him escape from death for another few seconds. The cinematography becomes confusing and difficult to follow as the bomb plummets towards and then into the sun, gravity affecting the cinematography itself. and Kappa makes it, following Cassie and Mace's words.
Finish it.
And he does, eventually standing between science and the sun, science and God, and he reaches out to touch it.